Reality is more flexible than you think. Most people live as if the world is fixed. They just accept circumstances. It's just the way things are. They assume that industries can't be disrupted. They believe that systems are too entrenched to change. They see barriers as permanent rather than temporary. And this mindset isn't just wrong. It is the single biggest limitation keeping you from creating the life, the business, or the impact you're capable of. Marc Andreessen, the founder of Netscape and the legendary Silicon Valley venture capitalist, co-founder of Andreessen Horowitz, he captured this perfectly. This is one of my favorite quotes. The world is a very malleable place. If you know what you want and you go for it with maximum energy and drive and passion, the world will often reconfigure itself around you much more quickly and easily than you would think. And this isn't just inspirational fluff, it's a fundamental truth about how reality really works. When you understand it, everything changes. Now, Marc Andreessen is not the first person to think like this. When Steve Jobs told his team that the impossible needed to be done in 5 weeks rather than 5 months, they pushed back hard. It couldn't be done. The timeline was unrealistic. The limitations were far too great, but Jobs didn't budge. Don't be afraid. You can do it. And somehow they did. And this happens so often that his team coined a term for it, the reality distortion field. And they meant it as a joke, but it was really just Jobs' ability to convince people that the impossible was possible through sheer force of will. But here's what they missed. The distortion wasn't in Jobs' mind, it was in everyone else's. Jobs simply understood that the most impossible things were merely difficult things that no one has been stubborn enough to solve yet. And what his team viewed as bending reality was actually just refusing to accept artificial limitations. The world is far more malleable than most people realize, and not because of magic, but because the barriers that we perceive are largely constructions that are built from these outdated assumptions that nobody has challenged yet, artificial constraints that exist only through this collective agreement or limiting beliefs about what's possible or permissible. And when you push against these barriers with enough force, they usually dissolve way more easily than you'd expect. Now, why don't we push against these barriers? Because we believe that we need permission. Whether you realize it or not, there's something that you want to build, something you want to create, something you want to pursue that you've been holding back on doing until somebody gives you the green light. You're not alone. Most people wait their entire lives for permission. Permission to start, permission to lead, permission to challenge the status quo. They assume that success comes from following all these established paths or hitting these predetermined milestones. Get the degree, build the resume, pay your dues, wait your turn. But the people who reshape industries, the people who reshape reality, the people who build the lives that they want, they don't wait for permission. They take action while everyone else is just waiting to be called on. Sarah Blakely didn't ask the male-dominated undergarment industry if she could revolutionize shapewear. She just cut the feet off her pantyhose and created Spanx. Brian Chesky and Joe Gebbia didn't ask hotel chains if they could turn spare bedrooms into accommodations. They just put air mattresses on their floor and created Airbnb. So what would you do differently tomorrow if you stopped waiting for someone to tell you it's okay to proceed? Think about it. Like, really think. What idea, what project, what career move would you immediately pursue? And the most dangerous form of self-deception is believing that you need someone else's approval or authorization to pursue your vision. The world is malleable, but it's only malleable for those willing to start reshaping it without this invitation. Now, Andreessen's quote contains a very critical qualifier that most people miss. He doesn't say the world bends for anyone with a wish or a hope. He specifically says that it reconfigures for those who pursue what they want with maximum energy and drive and passion. So it's not just about magical thinking or law of attraction. It's about applied force. Reality has inertia. It resists change, but that resistance isn't infinite. It's just enough to filter out the uncommitted. So this filtering mechanism is actually a feature, not a bug. It ensures that the world only reconfigures around those who care enough to push through the initial resistance. When Jan Koum was building WhatsApp, he was rejected by Facebook for a job. 5 years later, Facebook acquired his company for $19 billion. The difference wasn't luck, it was persistence applied to a clear vision. And the world will test your commitment before it yields. It asks, how badly do you want this? What are you willing to sacrifice? How long can you persist when the results aren't showing up immediately? And your answers to these questions will determine whether reality will reconfigure around you or remain stubbornly fixed. So look at your current business, your current job, your current career. Where are you applying casual effort and expecting significant results? Where have you backed off at the first sign of resistance? It's not about judgment, it's about clarity. The path that you're on right now is giving you exactly the results your current energy level deserves. Now, here's another counterintuitive idea about how reality bends. Resistance isn't evidence that you're going in the wrong direction. Usually, the resistance that you're feeling, the resistance that the world is giving you, is confirmation that you're pushing on something worth changing. Think about it. If what you're attempting would make no meaningful difference, the world wouldn't bother to resist. Systems only defend themselves against genuine threats to the status quo. The pushback that you're experiencing might be the strongest validation that you're actually onto something significant. And I realized this when I was studying Richard Branson's early days building Virgin Atlantic. Every established airline and industry expert told him that he would fail. Regulations were designed to keep newcomers out. Existing players actively worked to block his entry. But this wasn't just bad luck. It was a system protecting itself. Had Branson interpreted this resistance as a sign that he was on the wrong path, Virgin Atlantic would have never existed. So what resistance are you facing right now that you are misinterpreting as a sign to retreat rather than advance? The saying is so true. The obstacle is the way. The obstacles in your path, they're not warnings, they're filters. They separate those who want change from those who demand it. There is also a hidden cost to believing in a fixed reality. Most people never experience how malleable the world can be because they've internalized a fixed view of reality. And this mental model creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because if you believe that change is extremely difficult, this belief reduces your effort and expectations, and then reduced effort leads to minimal results. And then minimal results confirm your original belief. And then the cycle reinforces itself. And the highest price that you pay for seeing the world as fixed isn't the opportunities that you miss, it's the person that you never become. Because when you believe fundamental change is nearly impossible, you naturally dial back your ambition. You start to become realistic. You set achievable goals. You focus on small improvements rather than big vision. And this approach guarantees that you will never discover what's actually possible. And the alternative isn't delusion. It's calculated boldness. It's testing assumptions about what can be changed rather than just accepting them as these fixed truths. Now, you're gonna ask, Scott, if the world is truly malleable, is there a formula for bending it to your vision? And I have read, studied, learned from a lot of successful people who have reshaped reality. There is a pattern. There's a pattern that you can follow, that you have to follow if you want to reshape the world to what you believe in and to what you want to achieve. The first thing you have to understand is that you have to have absolute clarity over what you want to accomplish. Vague intentions produce vague results. The world doesn't bend for fuzzy thinking. So those who successfully change reality can clearly state exactly what they want, not just the outcome, but the reasoning, the values, the non-negotiables. And this clarity focuses their energy. So rather than splitting up all their efforts across all these different targets and ideas and businesses and shiny object syndrome, they concentrate on specific points that matter. The second thing that you have to understand is that you have to have unwavering conviction. The world will push back against anybody trying to change it. This resistance, it filters out all these casually interested individuals from the truly committed individuals. So those who successfully reshape reality, they maintain their convictions despite setbacks, despite skepticism, despite slow progress. And this isn't blind stubbornness. It's belief based on insight. It's seeing possibilities that other people miss because you've thought more deeply about the problem. The third thing that you have to understand is that you have to take disproportionate action. The degree to which reality bends correlates directly with the amount of force applied. So the people who reshape the world, they don't just work hard. They work with an intensity that makes other people feel uncomfortable. They take action at a pace and scale that seems excessive to anybody who's looking at them from the outside. So it doesn't mean burnout or hustle culture. It means focused effort on what actually matters. It means not spreading yourself thin across 100 small ideas or tasks. And the fourth idea that you have to understand is strategic positioning. Reality doesn't bend equally in all directions. It has these weak spots, these places where less force can create bigger change. Those who successfully reshape their world, they develop a sense for these opportunities. They position themselves where the new trends, the unmet needs, their unique skills, where all these things overlap. And this lets them create impact far beyond their direct effort. And the last idea is contagious energy. Nobody bends reality alone. Even the most determined individual has limits. So those who successfully reshape their world, reshape reality, they inspire others to join them. Their clarity, their conviction, their action, it attracts these allies, these resources, and these opportunities. And this turns personal force into team momentum. These are the 5 things that you have to understand. Now, after understanding these 5 things, you have to make a decision, because the world has always been malleable to those who are willing to test its flexibility. From the Wright brothers proving that flight was possible, to Katherine Johnson calculating the mathematics that put humans on the moon, from Steve Jobs creating the smartphone, to Greta Thunberg mobilizing millions for climate action. The people who reshape reality aren't fundamentally different from you. They've simply made a different decision about what's possible and what's worth pursuing with maximum energy. And this decision is available to you right now. You can choose to see all these barriers as fixed or flexible. You can choose to accept conditions or challenge them. You can choose to work within existing frameworks or to create new ones. Your perception of what's changeable directly determines what you can change. And the greatest revolution isn't external but internal. It's the moment that you realize that many of the limitations that you've accepted exist only because everyone agrees they exist. So where should you apply this understanding that the world is more flexible than it appears? Start with the constraints that you've internalized as fixed. So if you're an entrepreneur, the market is too crowded for new entrants. I don't have the right background or the right connections. The problem is too complex to solve quickly, or that's just how this industry works. Each of these beliefs deserves scrutiny, not blind rejection, but careful examination. Is this truly an immovable reality, or is it simply a collective assumption that nobody has really challenged yet? Then I want you to ask yourself, what would I truly pursue in my life, in my business, in my career, if I actually believed that Andreessen's observation and quote about the world would reconfigure around my vision and my energy, and not as this hypothetical exercise, but as a genuine question about what matters enough to warrant your maximum drive and passion. And the answer might scare you. It should. Anything worth applying your full force towards should feel a little bit intimidating. But remember that the world is far more malleable than most people ever discover. The barriers that seem solid, they usually dissolve when they're pushed against with enough determination and force. So I want you to push against them. I want you to identify an unmovable constraint in your life that is actually movable. And then I want you to understand that you've been accepting it without question. And then I want you to take an action that assumes that this constraint is flexible. It doesn't have to be dramatic, just a meaningful enough step that would make no sense if limitations were truly fixed. Maybe it's reaching out to somebody who's unreachable. Maybe it's setting a deadline that seems impossible. Maybe it's proposing some solution that other people would think is unrealistic. Now, this single action, it's not going to reshape your entire reality, but it will start training the most important muscle you have, your ability to test rather than accept the boundaries that others take for granted. And as Marc Andreessen reminds us, reality will reconfigure itself around you much more quickly and easily than you would think. So at the end of the day, the only question is whether you're going to test this truth or continue living as if the world is fixed. The choice is yours, and trust me when I tell you, it changes everything.